With this video, I'm going to introduce you to some resources that I've put together for you to help you brainstorm topic ideas for your essays. We're not talking about just one essay here, and we're not talking about just one topic or one story. You might end up with a core story or an anchor story that starts or is a big part of your journey of growth over time. Or you might have one anchor idea or story and then a montage of other ideas around it. So with these exercises that I've put together for you, you're going to have opportunity to come up with lots of different stories. And at this point, I would suggest you start off not filtering what you're willing to share with readers, but really think about what are some of the interesting things that mean a lot to you. So I'm going to share my screen and then show you some of the resources that I've put together using the new Craft Your College Journey spreadsheet that you've started using. There are 4 sheets within the larger spreadsheet that support your essay journey. The first is this essay journey schedule. And this is just a sample schedule, but for each person that goes through the essay journey, we'll have one of these that will show when you're going to provide things to me and when I'm going to respond to them. The next essay journey sheet that you have is this values exercise. It helps you to rate your values. So what you'll do with this is first go through the list. You can just look through it. And if you see one that is really important to you, then you check that. You might say healthy boundaries are really important. So you check that. And then after you've checked all the ones, you may have a lot of them here, as many as you want. Then the next column, you pick around 10 that are pretty important to you. You can look at these first column and say, yeah, this one's pretty important. And then from there, go to about top 5. Your goal with this exercise is to come up with top 5 values. These are the ones that you might refer to. So at this point, you'll think about values that you would be willing to share with admissions readers and that you think would support your application. The next sheet is a general brainstorming worksheet. Now, I don't want to scare you because there's a lot of boxes here. You don't have to fill them all in. I'm going to show you the sheet number 4. This is where we're going. This is your 4 favorite topic ideas. And I've given you a couple examples here of how to fill these forms out. You'll start off with the name of your story. This can be something that means something to you. I don't have to understand it. And then what's the springboard of the prompt? As we go through the prompts, you'll see that each one may have a springboard, such as your background or a conversation or something that someone did for you or a challenge. So what's the prompt that you're referring to here? What's the summary of the story? And then what it communicates about you. So here's another example. And now here's your space where you can write in the name of your story, the springboard that you're working from. You don't have to write out the whole prompt, but just this is starting with a challenge, or this is starting with something that means a lot to me. We can find a prompt that works with it. Then take some time to summarize your story. So do those 4. That's where you need to end up. This is the work that you have to have completed before your brainstorm session with me. And it has to be done 24 hours before you meet with me. So I have time to look at it before we meet. Now, to get ready for that, you want to think about a whole range of different possibilities. So that's what these exercises are for. The first is the 3 things exercise, and then the stories and objects exercise. And underneath each, so you'll go through the exercise and then you'll pick out your favorites. What's the story and what it communicates? This is just for you. You don't have to make this make sense to me because you'll have the next page to do that. But these are just things that will help you remember what story you're thinking of. So most of these ask for 3 things, like 3 things you know a lot about. I'm asking for 3 here because sometimes people get shy and they say, I don't know much about anything. So I want you to try to come up with 3 things, and 3 things you love and 3 things you're good at. 3 ways you've grown as a person. And this is talking about your character, not your skills. And the next one talks more about skills. But remember, these are not skills that they can see from your application. Oh, you were really good at math and that's how you got a good grade in math. But these could be things like communication or study skills that maybe you weren't that good at the beginning, or maybe the skill in standing up for yourself that you developed through your high school years. Remember to focus your stories and your development on your high school years, because that's what they're most interested in. You could do 3 obstacles or setbacks you've dealt with. because it doesn't have to be one major obstacle, but if you can demonstrate a pattern of being able to make something good out of something difficult, that's interesting. And now these next group, I say 1 to 3 of these, and it may be things you're getting better at, careers you're interested in. You can just list one if there's one you're focused on. And then the next one is the values that might connect to a career you're interested in, or words or phrases that remind you of stories in which you demonstrated those values. The next is strengths that might support a career you're interested in. And then words or phrases that might remind you of ways you've demonstrated those strengths. Some of you will want to talk about a career that you're interested in, and you can't just say, I'm really good at this, and so I think I'll be good at that career. You want to have a story or something that shows, I am good at this, or I really am interested in this, and these are the things that I've done that show my interest in that field. And then the next one might be a little hard for you to understand what I'm going for, but I said 1 to 3 words or phrases that remind you of stories you like to tell in which you shine in some way. Think of yourself at a family gathering or when you're with people, maybe new people. What's a story that you like to tell because it's a fun story, it comes across well, you look pretty good, maybe you're trying to impress someone, you tell this story, it doesn't come off as boastful, impressive, but it makes them like you. And I think these can be really interesting stories because they're usually good at drawing the reader in, and you tell it in your own voice. So even if you think this may not be super relevant to the key things that you want to communicate about yourself, maybe it's a story that's going to make you really likable. So just think about that. There may be a favorite story, or it could be a dramatic story that you've maybe in different English classes, you've had to tell a story that uses a lot of sensory details, and you have one story that's really good for that because there's blood in it, or something else that's very dramatic. Think about those stories because you may be able to fit them into a larger picture. And then the final one is 1 to 3 other characteristics, traits, or values that you want admissions readers to learn from these essays. You may think of things that aren't prompted by these prompts that I've put here. So this is your chance to put, this is something that I really think is important for me to communicate, and it's not communicated elsewhere in my application. So I want to talk about this. Okay, so then, as I said, you'll use this gray area to summarize, or to pull out some of the top ones, some of your favorites from that exercise. The next exercise is one I call stories and objects. And I've adapted this from one my colleague Ethan Sawyer uses, really focused on what he calls essence objects. And he has students find an object that represents something important about themselves. I prefer to think of objects and stories. Maybe it's an object, maybe it's a story, maybe it's an object and story that go together. But I've set up this chart in a way that you could answer one or both. Just use it as it's useful to you. For example, what's a food that reminds you of your grandmother? You may think of meatballs, and then you may think of an object that relates to that, a particular spoon she uses, or a story that relates to that. So one or both. The next question about something related to your father, and then the one after that about something related to your mother. And then the final column in this exercise is about importance. And I want you for each one to select whether this is something very important, somewhat important, or not important. And what I'm thinking about here is, as you're thinking about this, how much juice is there? Remember earlier when you were evaluating your activities and you thought about the hummingbird, which one has a lot of juice, which I get a lot of energy from this. Or even as I'm thinking about this, I feel something in my body like, this is core to me. This is not something that's just superficial, but this is something that's important to me. So rate that. Again, you're not filtering now, is this something I'd be comfortable talking about or something I really want to talk to admissions readers about? Right now, we're just thinking about what are some of the things that are important to who you are, because we want you to come across as a three-dimensional whole person, not just a caricature, not just your stats or your GPA. So think about the things that are important to you. You'll see there are a lot of different questions here. Just answer the ones where there seem to be juice, or you're not sure how important it is, but you have something interesting to say, just put it in there. And then at the bottom, you'll identify the 3 that are most interesting to you. And once you've finished those 2 exercises, as much as you want to do with them, come to this 4th page, which has the summaries. And then after you finish this summary, you'll email me and say, I've finished my 4 favorite topics. And then you'll be approved for your brainstorming session with me. So let me know if you have any questions, but have fun with this and be willing to go a little bit deep, because the deeper you go, the more you're going to attract your readers, draw them in, make your essay meaningful and memorable, and help yourself stand out from the other applicants.